Good morning. Hope you're doing good today. So in today's message, I want to talk to you about refining our critical thinking, and specifically with regards to making sure that we're not going to fall victim to being manipulated, right? And having our minds controlled and just being persuaded away from being able to follow our own logic. Okay, and so this kind of stuff is so subtle. I know you guys know this, but it's kind of like I do a lot on this channel. I like to take things that we feel like we already know, and then just kind of dive deeper and dissect the little pieces and just look at those closely. And I feel like just in my own life, by doing this, I'm able to gain perspective and a deeper understanding every time I do this. And so I just hope that you enjoy this process as well. And that's what we're going to be doing today with regards to just critical thinking. So, all right. I want to open by sharing with you all my experience back when I was in college, and specifically when I started taking the first few classes within my major, which was art, okay, fine art. And so it was really eye-opening, truthfully, because it was like I'll just take drawing for example, okay, because we had to have those classes first before we could go into painting. Okay, so in our drawing classes, it was like it was like the whole order of business every day that you walked into your drawing class was to, at least it felt like, was to destroy any preconceptions you had about everything you've ever laid your eyes on. It didn't matter if it was a tree or an apple or the human body. It just didn't matter. And so what it ultimately taught us to do, these classes, was to look closely, okay, closer than what you've ever looked before. And what it taught me, and this was especially, let me go ahead and just transition over to the next stage, because it's all going to come together then, okay, especially in the painting classes. So everything I'm talking about in the drawing classes was amplified in the painting classes. And this is how, not only learning, like relearning the structure of how something, I'm thinking of like an apple, the structure of how something looks with regards to its shape and the lines and everything, but then adding the color to it as well was like mind-blowing. Okay, essentially what I learned was that it seems to be human nature to just unconsciously, as we go through life, unconsciously gain a base or foundational understanding of things, and then just once that has been registered in our mind, it's like it's done. It's like checked off almost, and then you continue on in life with that base understanding. But the problem is we never look deeper. The problem is it's so simplified that it can be wrong, right? And it's not that. Here's the thing. I think the human mind functions that way for good reason. Again, I'm always thinking of, like, well, surely if that's the divine design, there's a reason. We just haven't figured it out yet. You know what I mean? So my understanding is that probably serves us well for most things. It's like we don't have to be a scientist on every single thing in existence. There's no way. We wouldn't even have enough time, right, to do that, to be an expert on everything. I get it. So that base, simplified, foundational understanding or grasp of most things is going to be sufficient, okay? But the problem arises when there are people in your life, either in close proximity, like in a close relationship, or in a position that it's like places them in power, and so they're not someone that you are immediately involved with closely, but they're still having an impact on your life via your community, or whatever it is. So I'm thinking like, politics and things like that, right? Elected officials, things like that. So my point is, the problem is, if you look at these base, simplified, foundational understandings of things in our reality, and you start to have experiences in your life that teach you that that there are people who have hidden motives, who have their reasons, their reasons, right, which is never justified, okay, in my opinion. But it's like these people have an intention to deceive you for their own gain in some way, shape, or form, okay? And so what they do is they use these base foundational understandings that we have, that we're just operating from, against us. So there's certainly a need to, in my opinion, revisit what it means to truly operate from a position of critical thinking. It's not like you have to just all at once have this sit down, I'm going to just totally tear down all of my existing paradigms all at once. It's like, it doesn't have to be that way. It can be gradual. It can be something that as different experiences happen in your life, or different situations that are challenging, as they arise in your life, then you kind of just a little bit along the way just reevaluate things. You see what I'm saying? But the whole point here is that I think that we need to consider it. We just need to just plant that seed in our minds that we want to refine critical thinking in general. And then once we truly understand what that means, and it's starting to operate in our mind, at that point it will just naturally help us with our discernment. And that's my goal, is to give you things to think about, not to sit here and try to assert certain absolutes as truth and just get you to just just take it on as truth. That's never my intention, which that right there should be a red flag for you. Anytime somebody's trying to hook you in, like you need to be dependent on their leadership and their discernment. You need to be the one in your own driver's seat. You know what I mean? And so I'm always personally looking for people who are encouraging me to do that, and who are helping me to do that, right? Those people truly want the best for you. And so those are beautiful associations to have, absolutely beautiful. And so I just encourage you to look for that too, right? So let me just give you guys this example. This is a real life example in my painting class. And this guy, my professor, he was incredible, man. His paintings look like photographs. You know what I'm saying? He was that accurate. And I have a lot of funny memories from that class, just learning so much. But one of the most impressionable lessons I had was sitting down in this class where we each had, there'd be like groups of us, and we each had a small still life sitting in front of us that we had to try and paint as realistically as possible. And so my still life in my group was some apples, and one was red and one was green, and so I'm mixing my paint on my palette, and I'm making this really pretty green color that matches, and here I go painting my apple, and it's green. Simple, right? Green apple, green apple. And so here comes the professor, and he's just so nice, and he goes, yeah, can I just show you a little something? I was like, yeah. So he grabs my paintbrush and my palette, and he starts loading up the brush with like red, like on one side. He flips it, puts a little bit of blue on the other side, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what does he do? Sure enough, he goes straight for the green apple and starts adding these little just areas, just dabs of red and blue, and I'm thinking, I don't know where you're getting this from. And so he taught me to look closer. He taught me to look closer. And so when I did, I could see that it's really true. When you're looking at the highlights, the areas on something where the light is hitting, and also when you're looking at the shadows where there's absence of light, you don't just see white and black. You know, like a young kid that's painting, if they want to add, you know, a spotlight or a shadow, that's what they may do. They may, you know, get some white paint or some black paint on their brush and just put that on there, and that's fine and good, right? But if you look closer, shadows can be purple or blue. And so let's just take purple for example, okay? You're not going to mix that purple on your palette and then apply it just as your whole shadow. You're going to actually evaluate the shadow itself and see, okay, over here it's got a little bit more green, and over here it's got a little bit of blue. And you're going to load your brush that way, and you're going to add a little bit of each, and then you're going to take your fan brush and you're going to kind of smooth it out, and you can still see those color variations within that one aspect, like in the shadow, for example. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that just crazy? And so yes, I learned so much. And you know, another thing that, you know, if you're not into art, that's just really interesting to observe is the stars. If you know, ever enjoy stargazing, look up there, and you know, it's not as simple as just seeing a white star. If you look really close, sometimes they're twinkling, literally, they're flashing. And some of them, you know, it's almost like you can see these different colors. So it's just which brings something to mind, which is really interesting when you're really evaluating things, which is that song, you know, the old nursery rhyme, you know, twinkle twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are. What you are? Well, you're a star, right? Or is there more? See, so it's just about learning to look deeper, to protect ourselves, right? To defend our sanity from people who try to gaslight us, from people who try to write our reality and script it per what's going to benefit them at our expense, things like that. You know what I mean? Again, on the small scale, the micro in our personal life, and the larger, the macro scale, right? With our society, we just need to really be careful about these things. So, you know, if you're like me, you question everything. Obviously, right? I'm sure you figured that out about me by now. But I was overthinking as usual, and I'm Googling online, and I ran across this famous author, Carl Sagan, and he actually has some interesting books published, and I thought, okay, I'm going to look into that. But you know, he had a quote that that really resonated with me, and I'm not saying I totally agree with everything this guy's all about. I don't know. Again, this is new for me, but this just really stood out. Let me share this with you. So so this quote said, hang on, let me fix this. Here we go. It said, well, the person sharing it actually said, Carl Sagan wisely implores us to question everything our leaders tell us. And this could be a leader in your life, someone trying to be a leader in your life. You know what I mean? A controlling person in your life. This right here might even help you to identify someone like that in your life as trying to control you. But it says, one of the saddest lessons of history is this. If we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. And I thought, that's really deep. If you think about it, that's really deep, okay? So, what I really want to point out here is where it says, of course, my finger had to hit the wrong picture, where it says, you know, If we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. That part of it, it says we've been captured essentially by it. Okay, it's like a halting of our own critical thinking. It just stops. There comes a point sometimes in these situations where that gets cut off or blocked. You know, in other words, here's how I view this. When thinking about like science is sticky. It can be sticky to me. And here's what I mean. You know, we still have new discoveries, right? It feels like every week, you know, even still today, new discoveries about our reality, about nature, you know. And so we never need to get to the point where we're overly confident and feel like we got it all figured out, okay? Because life has a way to humble us if we get like that, right? Whether it's in our personal lives or in science, okay? And so it's like the trap is every new discovery creates a new framework for our perception, okay? It's like every time we have this new discovery, it's like it expands our minds, and then it also simultaneously creates this framework or structure which kind of creates your perception filter now, and that's all you can see through, okay? And so there's still more out here that you can miss that's outside of this framework, okay? So this in itself, as we have an experience or a discovery or whatever that that expands our mind, as this new framework is made in our minds, right? That in itself can become an obstruction to truth. And so, you know, let me propose something that feels radical, even though it really shouldn't be. Shouldn't every new discovery open our eyes to the fact that there's more to discover? You see what I'm saying? It really should. And so when you think about variables in science, this is really interesting, okay? Because again, every new discovery should open our eyes to the fact that there are variables that are still undiscovered or unidentified, right? And the importance here is that a variable in science can totally change the conclusion. And because of that, they could essentially totally invalidate previously asserted facts. Okay, so a variable is defined as anything that can change or be changed. So a variable can change something, or it can be changed itself. It's fluid in that way, okay? And so there's a term called a lurking variable. And look, I'm not a scientist, so let me just put that out there. I'm not an expert. I just like to research, right, for fun, to learn and grow. But a lurking variable in science is a variable, or even you might say a data point that is hidden, right? One that's lurking is hidden, unknown and not accounted for, yet affects the result. Okay, so I want to introduce you to this phrase I learned just in going down this rabbit hole last night, just looking into all the things associated with Carl Sagan. And there's a phrase called weasel words. And these are words or statements that are intentionally ambiguous or misleading. And let me give you some examples, okay? Based on that definition right there, let me give you some examples. You know, I experienced something one time where someone very close to me had gotten into a hobby and was sharing with me some of the accessories that were being purchased. And there was a word used to describe something that was being purchased. And I thought, you know, what is that? I've never heard that before. And so I used critical thinking in this instance to look at the context of what was being shared with me to figure out what it was. And so I called it out. I said, "Oh, you mean this?" And when I said that, there was a grin that came across their face, and they had no choice but to admit, yeah, that's right. So sometimes people who want to hide things from you will use very just uncommon terms, fancy words and things like that, for different reasons. But sometimes they'll do it. Sometimes they'll do it just to be a, fill in the blank, to try and make you feel like you're not as smart as they are, because they're an expert in that area, right? Which is so immature, totally. But sometimes they'll use these terms to try and get around from sharing with you the full truth of something. And so in this manner, they tell on themselves. In this manner, if you just pay attention and you're truly observant in the moment, you can catch this stuff and you can call it out. And in this instance, I immediately knew why this person did that, because it was of great concern to me why they would purchase this. There was no good reason for it, and it could possibly indicate bad intentions. And so, without getting into too many details, I want to share so bad with you all, but it's a public platform and this was a real thing, so I'll keep it vague. But I just want to give you a heads up on something like that. I want you to just be awake enough to catch this stuff in your life for your own safety. You know what I'm saying? Not just your sanity, which is very important, but your safety too. So, the point here is that it's a big thing to look out for. It truly is, and sometimes these weasel words and phrases can be meant to confuse you, just simply for that purpose, and to, for a word salad, you've heard that phrase a lot, to make you feel dumb, and again, possibly to attempt to hide their real motives or to hide something. So what's interesting is I was looking more into, weasel words and what that means, and I found some other sites that were expanding on this topic, and they were trying to say that when people use terms like sometimes or may or generally or probably, that it's with bad intentions. And I'm thinking, maybe not, because yeah, there are people with bad intentions who are very selfish, narcissistically inclined or whatever, who do this kind of thing to give themselves what's called deniability, because they never want to be held accountable, okay, or responsible. Or these terms could just be accounting for unidentified variables, like what we were talking about, right? And so you have to really use critical thinking here. We never need to fall victim. It's really falling victim to the concept of applying a blanket statement to something, and like just such a solid, firm mental structure in our mind, and then perceiving everything from that. Because it's not black and white in that regard. We need to really sharpen our discernment to understand that, because sometimes we're overly cautious and we're not even seeing, there's still good in the world, and there's still good people in the world. We need to make sure that we're not blind to that fact. You know what I mean? We're just doing ourselves and others a disservice if we're doing that. So I'm just trying to encourage that critical thinking. So why would people with good intentions use these words, like sometimes, generally, maybe, things like that, right? Again, I think it truly is accounting for unidentified variables, which, if a person's doing that, then to me that indicates somebody really values truth, and like to a high degree, and is coming from a position of high conscientiousness. That's great. That's a wonderful quality to have. Okay? And this is where this, something can be seen from either way, from, a good light or a bad light, good intentions or bad or dark intentions. And so just, it's crazy. We're gonna get a little bit more into it. I didn't intend for this to be long, but we're already at 24 minutes. But this is how things can be turned on you, and here's how I feel about that. If people are taking something that's a good quality about you and spinning it and presenting it to yourself or others like it's a bad thing, if other people believe that, then those are not your people. It really works in your favor anyway. It goes back to one of my favorite Bible verses that says God works all things for the good of those who love him. It's true. It just simply means that these people are not for you. Just let them fall away. If you're not important enough to a person for them to apply critical thinking, it is what it is. You know what I mean? So I just always encourage us to look deeper, okay? So I've been noticing for a while now that deception is so prevalent in our reality that even our language, like our words and phrases and even symbols, have or can have, right, double or opposite even meanings, okay? So again, these things can be flipped to demonize the inherent goodness that they once stood for. We're going to talk about it. So the things to pull from that concept are, we need to, number one, always be vigilant and aware and awake and observant. Number two, to be a true critical thinker, we have to dissolve egoic ties to fancy terms and labels and symbols and just focus on the details. That's how I see what it means to be a true critical thinker, okay? Because there's deceptive associations that have been tied to terms and symbols even, and phrases, and it can lead us astray in our mind if we just meet a concept in our mind at that surface level. Okay, you kind of have to go deeper to go beyond the BS, to go beyond the deception. You have to go deeper. Because language in all its forms can be hijacked by the darkness and spun in a way to confuse us, toy with our emotions, and most of all, divide us. Our voice of reason should be free of persuasion. We need to protect it. We need to defend it. Okay, within ourselves. There's no point in arguing with somebody out here who's entrenched in deception. They're just totally captive and they're not even working to chisel away at it. Just let that go. You know what I mean? So in that regard, we just need to work on ourselves so that we don't have a need to be validated by others, okay? So that we won't be affected by others using labels and phrases as attacks also, okay? Yeah. Again, it's no use to defend ourselves with something that has been muddied as greatly as language. We just need to know what we know and value our peace, right? So, it takes me back to my drawing class. It always served you best when you would lay down your pencil, marks softly and lightly, right? And then just add to that in layers, okay? As opposed to someone that just hits the paper hard, just, bears down really hard, and, they're very sure of themselves and certain. It's hard to erase that. So I think we need to tread lightly that way in our mind as well, right? And even when we're digging deeper, we need to just do so in layers, okay? Because I feel like when we just jump in 100% to a concept, that's harder to get out of, right? And sometimes life teaches us that in hindsight. But yeah, the best drawings were the ones that didn't have erase marks all over the place, because it was laid down softly and in layers, right? Humility, I feel like, works the same way. So I want to take a look at the etymology of the word certain. To be certain, okay? So I looked up the online etymology dictionary, right? And circa 1400 and beyond, It meant to be certain, meant to be established as true beyond doubt. But before that, just before that, okay, in the 14th century, which was from 1301 to 1400, it meant indefinite, not specifically named, known, but not described. Such a subtlety, a careful respect for the heavy meaning that a word brings to our life through our perception and understanding. You see how that was just, that definition started, at least there's maybe more beyond that, right, in history, but let's just look at these two examples. The definition started in the 14th century as being careful, a carefully laid, soft definition. Okay, indefinite, not specifically named, known, like a base level, right? Known, but not described. It allowed for people to, in their minds, when they heard that word certain, it meant, if this was the definition to them, it's like conditioning the mind to understand certainty comes with humility. To understand that with certainty, there's more to learn to be able to describe something and know it deeper. You see what I'm saying? And then by 1400, at the end of the 14th century, right, certain meant established as true beyond doubt. No doubt. No doubt. And if there's never any doubt, ever, in something, there's no room for correction. There's no room for growth. So this is just, looking at the history of words has just been life-changing for me and incredible. And I just encourage you to do that too if you have interest. So then I looked at what was going on during that time period, because that seemed to be a pretty big flip-flop of that definition in the word certain. So it was really interesting. In the 14th century, it said more than 45 million lives from political and natural disasters in both Europe and the Mongol Empire, right? There were more than 45 million lives lost. And during that time, I feel like that's a big deal, because it relates it to not just natural disasters, but political disasters too. So there was certainly a lot going on. And it was also known, this time period, for the decline of the feudal system. So there was a fight for power. And then ultimately, in the next century, when the definition changed, the 15th century, it was known as one of the most revolutionary centuries in history. So many accomplishments, right? My question is, did we get overly confident? Did we become overly certain? Because just in that one little clue, the definition of that term, it certainly seems so. Right? So we have to be careful. We always have to be careful with confidence. So looking up the term confidence, I found it to just simply mean being self-reliant. Okay, self-reliant. So let's take a look at the word rely. Okay, rely. And this blew my mind too. Okay. Again, keep in your mind, confidence means to be self-reliant. Okay, again, this is all from the online etymology dictionary. I really enjoy it. But when you look at rely, this is from the mid 14th century. It meant to gather or assemble an army. Or furthermore, from the Latin religare, to fasten or bind. Okay, and of course it has to say the older sense are now obsolete. Yeah, okay. All right. So you have to, in order to bind or to fasten something, there's two parts, minimum, right? Two parts. Okay? And again, to rely means to gather, assemble, an army even. So here we have confidence being described to us as being self-reliant. Well, self is one, and then you have reliance indicating more than one. So there's a contradiction right there. Okay, so I'm sharing this with you to break those mental structures that are founded on deceit. That's what we need to do, right? It's not just about learning. Sometimes it's about unlearning, and we learn in the process. So I just hope that this has given you a lot to think about today. I hope that I got the wheels turning for you, and I hope it was really interesting and entertaining and educational for you. I thank you so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.